Hey, welcome back to our podcast. I'm glad you're here. In today's episode, Greg and I are going to talk about building good habits and what can happen if you don't have good habits, the alternative being bad habits. So we're going to talk about daily routines. We're going to talk about dollar productive activities. So if these are things that you're interested in or think that could help you build your business to the next level, then stick around. Welcome back, and I'm here with my friend Greg DeMarco, and we're talking about building good habits and how important habits are in building our business. So, Greg, you've had time to reflect now on this topic. So, let me know. What do you think about building good habits? You know, having routines, and how important is that in our daily business life?
Yeah, I mean it's a great topic because it covers a lot of interesting things that they've discovered over many decades of research. But yeah, it's really important. I mean, let's face the facts. When we're growing personally or professionally, we have to develop the right habits in order to take us to a successful outcome. And if we want to do that, we've got to build those habits. And we have to basically look at what habits we're doing that aren't good and identify those, and then we need to work on replacing those with the right habits in order to hit those milestones or goals that we're trying to reach, whether it's in sales, business, life, whatever that may be.
You're not telling me that you have some bad habits in your life, are you?
No. Me, no, I don't have any bad habits at all. Yes, I do actually have some bad habits, but I've worked very hard over the last 5, 10 years to mitigate those and replace them with good habits. And I started on that journey probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I've been in sales for a long time, but you develop the wrong habits, and when you start getting serious about your career, i.e., the sales side, I started to make some changes. It started out with me. I was smart enough to figure out that I wasn't the best. So when I started in that sales arena, I would look for the top three dogs, whoever they were, and I would get to know them, and I'd watch, and the questions that I would ask them were specific. What is it your clients, when someone comes to you, like I was in the boat business, if when a client comes to you about a boat, what are they really looking for? What do you think they're really looking for? And that was an important question because it distinguished exactly what buyers are looking for, and you need to understand that. So I got in the habit of asking the top salespeople in the company how they do things. Fortunately, they were willing to share because you know as well as I do, if you get in the wrong culture, sales culture, and is so competitive, they don't want to give up their secrets. But where I was, they were very good about helping you along. Just don't stomp on their feet, but you can watch them, you can listen, and you can learn what's going on. And that's basically how I started to grow my success.
I think that's interesting that you wanted to find out first what the client was looking for in a boat, because I think that's a bad habit that we can get into is that when we meet somebody, we think automatically we got to give them our spiel, we got to do our
Yeah.
presentation, and that's not necessarily the right place to start. I think it depends too on what you're selling, and the circumstances around what you're selling.
Yeah.
But if so, in for real estate, I know that is the critical thing is understanding what my client, they're not a client yet, what my prospect is actually looking for. Because if I just go on this spiel about how what the markets, I could talk about the market, I could talk about how great my real estate office is, I could talk about
Hmm.
the different awards that I've got selling real estate, I could talk about the plan that I was going to have to sell their property. But if I didn't pay attention to what was their problem, what was their specific need, I wasn't going to be able to connect. So that would be a bad habit. That would, of mine if I just automatically went into my spiel without asking first. Would
Yeah,
you say that's an adequate description of how a bad habit could harm your business?
it's perfect because I learned very early um, that it was most important to know where and understand where those clients were coming from or those prospects as buyers. And when I started, I wasn't very successful because it's funny, I just never thought of that right at the beginning. I thought, okay, I understand this boat now, I understand this product. I'll just explain the whole thing, get it over with, and then they'll buy. So I would jump in without even really making an attempt to understand who they were, where they were coming from, what their interests were. Instead, I would just start talking about this boat, and really, it only came down to a few things that they cared about: storage, the color, was it snap out carpet, and was it safe? Those were really the main things. So I stopped talking about the boat in its entirety, and I started saying, okay, what's most important to you? Well, they'd say that, it's the color. Does it come in red? Does it have snap out carpet? Is there a lot of storage? You know, and is it safe? That's all I talk about. And then it was from there, it was a no brainer. But I had to really focus on changing that habit because I had a bad tendency to be impatient. I just wanted to get in there and do it. But the reality was, you have to sell at their level. If they're not moving quickly, then you don't move quickly. But you want to keep control of the conversation. Obviously, you don't want it to veer off, and you don't want it to get too slow. But you want to sell at their level, and that's important. And you have to develop a positive. You have to develop the right attitude and the right habits in order to focus on that laneway. So, yeah,
So Michael Hyatt would develop routines,
yeah,
and he had a morning routine and he had an evening routine. Where he would say, "Okay, I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I do this, I do that, I do the other thing." And the idea is that you can fine tune your routine. We all have a routine. Actually, that's the interesting thing is we all basically get up in the morning and pretty much do things the same way. But if we is to actually write down the routine and we fine tune it, we can actually become more productive. That's developing good habits.
yeah,
Another way to say it is that we can have chores. Like there's certain things as a realtor that I need to do. There's certain things as a regular as a other type of salesperson, whether you're selling boats, insurance, or whatever. But the routine that we develop as in our chores, like do I have a routine for starting my day?
yeah,
Do I check my email? Do I check my email all the time, or do I check my email at specific times? Those are habits. Like a bad habit would be every time your notification comes on that you got a new email that you rush over and check it, right? Because that's an interruption. Or do you work in blocks of time where have you established good blocks of time or good habits where you can get a lot accomplished? So there's chores like that. There's routines. So how would you say routine fits into building good habits?
it's paramount. It's critical. Um, I used to be pretty. I don't know. I don't know how you'd put it. I guess just sort of lazy and winging it kind of guy. And I changed that completely because I realized it wasn't serving me or the people that I was trying to sell to. So, I have a specific routine that I followed, and I still do actually. Like in the first thing in the morning, like I get up and I go work out because that's important to me, and then I'm ready for the day. But the first thing I do is I just very quickly skim through my email, see what came in. I'm looking for clients. If there's a client that responded to me for something. That's not the case. I put it down. I don't look at my email generally until the middle of the day and then at the end of the day. But I do have specific routines that I follow, and that helps me to keep track of the priorities. I'm not just in sales now. I'm obviously running a business and some other things, but If I was in sales strictly, I had a very specific routine that I stuck with in order to keep my day structured, and I had habits that I needed to do, like follow ups, calls, things of those nature, sending out presentations or pricing or whatever it was that I needed to do. So yeah, it's critical, I think.
We had a realtor in one of our offices, and he'd been a realtor for like 40 years. And in real estate, they have what they call the Medallion Club. I think in every business they have, okay, here's our top 10% of people. And so he had been on the Medallion Club in those 40 years. He had probably been on the Medallion Club 35 out of those 40 years, maybe even more than that. So he was uh, consistently very, very good. Um, and his routine, he didn't. His routine was basically he'd come into the office about 8 o'clock in the morning. He had a regular notebook. He didn't do anything on the computer. He didn't know how to work a computer, so he had a regular notebook, and he had in that notebook was a list of his names. He had all these people that he had come in contact with over the years, and he just started calling through his calling through his people, and he did that day in and day out. And then at 11 o'clock in the morning, he would go home, and he was done. He was pretty much done, unless he was listing a property or presenting an offer. He was pretty much done his day. He didn't go out and show houses to anybody. His business was based on listing properties of people that he knew, and that's all he did was call people that he knew. So he had that specific routine, and it worked for him to very, very successfully. Now, um, with the advent of the do not call list and all that kind of stuff, and privacy issues, he started to get into a little, sometimes people would, complain about him calling because he was persistent,
Hmm.
but I think that, it's the idea is that you can adapt your routine, which I'm not sure if he has or not, but I would recommend that you do. So you can't just
Yeah.
call people. You have to be aware of different rules and regulations as well.
Yeah, and it depends. Like, some sales organizations are, inbound leads that come in. Obviously, you can call them because they're sending them into you. But if you're doing cold calls, that's a different story, right? And it
Yeah,
depends on how the organization is really set up for that. Is it set up for, inbound leads that come in? Those ones are great because you can deal with those by calling people and they already know that they kind of anticipate that you're calling them, right?
yeah,
But if it's a cold call, you've got to handle that differently, right? So, but habits are really really important, and the routine that you mentioned, you have to come up with something that works for you. Hence, that's one of the reasons why I always looked for the top salespeople in the organization to get to know and find out what they were doing that made them successful. But it's important, I think I need to add this, is understanding what your value system is, what your skill set is, what you're good at, what your style is. Because some people are okay with picking up a phone and calling a stranger and others aren't. So, what works best for you? What's your personality type that's going to allow you to be successful in what you're doing?
yeah. Yeah, my personality style wouldn't be to pick up the phone and call somebody I didn't know, but it would be the personality style of my wife. She would definitely do that
Yeah.
because she's more of a people person than I am. You know, but yeah, it's interesting, that we all need to come up with. You were referring to the value proposition. Another term for that would be the unique selling proposition.
Hmm.
Your USP. What's your USP? Let's use some acronyms here to confuse people.
Yeah, your USB.
Yeah,
Well, that's true. But one of the a really good book, and I know everybody's probably heard of this, but Stephen Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's a great book. I mean, he really, I think, hits it on the head as to a good process to sort of start with, and he's got like 7 habits that he talks about, and we've already covered some of them, like you know uh, understanding first, to try and understand the buyer, and then be understood. That's one of his tenets in there. The sharpen the saw. In other words, continue to grow yourself, learn, train, read, do self improvement, personal growth. That's really, really critical. Being proactive and taking responsibility for your life and your actions. So, what kind of a real estate agent do you want to be? What do you want to? What does your reputation, say about you? What's your credibility level? Um, that's really important. Um, Another one is just begin with the end in mind. Obviously, if you're going to set a goal, you want a vision of what that goal is. So look at the end in mind and then walk it back and say, okay, where can I start to do this? So there's a lot of great things that Stephen Covey obviously talks about in that book. I recommend they pick it up and read it. It's a good book.
Yeah. And if you're into books, there's another one by James Clear, Atomic Habits. And one of the things I really liked about what he talked about was he talked about what essentially is incremental growth. If you change one thing 1% every week, so say you improved your habits 1% a week. 1% doesn't sound like a great amount, does it? But
But that's the way to start.
that's the way you start, because at the end, if you improved 1% every week, by the end of a year you'd have improved 50%. And that's a significant improvement. So there's tremendous value, I think, in understanding what incremental growth can mean to you. And Atomic Habits by James Clear, and seven habits of highly effective people by Stephen Covey. Two recommended books for overcoming bad habits and establishing good habits.
Yep, yep. That's a great topic because I think it's a topic that isn't spoken enough about to help people.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you don't confront your bad habits, you're not going to be in business very long.
No, you're not, because if that means that you're not growing, and if you're not growing, then you're stagnant and nothing else is happening for you. So
Great.
yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Greg, for your insight into developing good habits and getting rid of the bad habits. And I'm glad to hear that you don't have any bad habits. But
Of course not.
and I will definitely say that I have some habits that I need to work on, and I appreciate your help in doing that.
Yeah,
So,
you do have some habits you need to work on. That's for sure. That,
so
that being a Montreal fan is one of them. But anyway,
yeah. Well, we can show that little video of you taking off that.
no,
That wasn't you that you was in that video. No.
no,
Okay.
that wasn't me.
All
Oh
right.
dear, we won't
Anyway,
go there.
yeah, we're talking about Toronto Maple Leaf fans and how it's always next year for them. So anyway, but
All right, my friend.
we
We
better leave.
shall.
We better leave.
Yeah,
So
we
thanks,
digress.
thanks, thanks a lot, Greg, for your time.
Thank you. Bye.